Chapter 6 of Betty Baird by Hamlin Weikel. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Holly Jensen. Chapter 6 The Challenge. In response to Miss Payne's request, Betty knocked at her door, and a preoccupied voice said in answer, "Come in." In a beautiful sunny room lined with books and pictures, at a large mahogany writing desk strewn with papers, sat her cousin, who looked up absently as Betty walked towards her. "Oh, you, little Elizabeth? I am glad you have come. I was so busy I had almost forgotten you. Don't tell your father," she added, laughing. "Father wouldn't believe anything against you, Cousin Elizabeth," the girl replied warmly, remembering the reverence with which her name was always spoken at home. Something of this faith was communicated to Miss Payne, and gave a twinge to her guilty conscience, and determined her, for the present at least, to give Betty her undivided attention. Miss Payne was a very busy woman, who not only conducted a large school, but also wrote and lectured and attended to numerous club duties. "Your father has told me about your studies. You are, I judge, ready for the class in which Miriam and Caroline are, all girls a year or two older than you. I am not surprised to find you so far advanced in Latin, knowing your father's love for it. Let me hear you read." She gave Betty a fat little volume of Virgil. "Remarkable!" she exclaimed, when Betty had finished, and Betty started with pleasure and surprise. "You could go a class or two higher in Latin. How like Cousin Tom!" "Yes, but Cousin Elizabeth, I don't know a thing about geometry, and I don't understand algebra, and I hate arithmetic," said Betty. Miss Payne smiled sympathetically. "Of course you do. We all do. Arithmetic is one of the necessaries of life, and we naturally prefer the luxuries." During this interview, Betty was undergoing an examination of which she was wholly unconscious. Miss Payne was a student of girl nature, so while Betty read aloud a little poem, her cousin was observing her minutely. "Dear little old-fashioned thing! I didn't know that style had survived," she mused. "I wonder how she will affiliate with my fashionable set. She is probably the brightest girl in school, but that fact won't endear her to the others. I must tell Miss Green to watch, and not allow the girls to be overbearing. But I'll not protect her. She has spirit, courage, self-confidence, a nimble wit, alertness, and evidently large imaginative faculties. It will be interesting to watch her development. There is nothing to criticize in her manner, except perhaps a too great enthusiasm, a contrast to my cool, self-possessed pupils. She reads like a scholar. That's Tom. She stands and sits like a lady. That's her mother. There is, however, something boyish about her which will get her into scrapes. She has beautiful cameo-like features, though at first one does not notice them, because one is conscious only of her great beautiful eyes and mass of pale wild hair. What a mop! I must try to smooth it out. Such a strong chin for a child, like her grandmother's. It is strange to see that chin again on a child. I'll not coddle her. No doubt Miss Payne thought she could coddle. "How do you like your schoolmates?" she inquired, aroused from her study of the girl by the completion of the poem. Betty hesitated and looked down uneasily, for she could not tell the incident at the breakfast table without feeling like a telltale, and only that incident could explain the strength of her dislike for her companions. Miss Payne saw the disturbance in her face, and surmised that Betty had already had trouble of some kind. "I haven't talked with them much, Cousin Elizabeth," she said evasively, playing with the book of poems. "Of course not, but I thought you might have a few impressions." "Impressions in plenty!" exclaimed Betty, with a warmth not flattering to the girls. "My child, I want to help you to accommodate yourself to your new surroundings," said Miss Payne, mechanically arranging the papers on her desk, for she was disturbed by the evident fact that her namesake had not been graciously received. "You have always lived in a village," she continued, "where everyone knew you, and where you have had things very much your own way. The girls here have had a different kind of life. They are more mature in many respects, and less in others. You will find them very self-possessed and inclined to be critical." "Oh, yes, I have discovered that," answered Betty, as she drew herself up. "Now don't be sensitive, Elizabeth, for nothing in the world will make you so miserable. Don't yield to it for a moment. Flee from it. Forget yourself by thinking of others. As far as possible, take these girls as they are. Don't analyze them. Don't think much about how they treat you. You will find your friends by and by." Miss Payne laughed and shook her head. "Oh, if you young people could or would profit by the experience of others!" The luncheon bell saved Betty the necessity of replying, but she thought, "Take that Kendall girl as she is? Well, I guess not," and she ran upstairs to get the challenge. As she took her seat at the table, she put the challenge at Miriam's plate, and Miriam, coming in later, picked it up curiously and turned it over, wondering what it was and who had sent it. "I don't know the writing," she said to Caroline. "Oh, open it, Miriam!" exclaimed Caroline petulantly. "You always make such a fuss." Miriam did open it, and as her eyes caught the words she grew scarlet, and concentrated scorn settled on her darkening face. "The impudent thing!" she muttered, darting a withering glance at Betty, who, as far as her trembling fingers and fluttering heart would allow, was eating, apparently deaf and blind to the storm gathering around her. It was not an easy situation, for every girl at the table, she well knew, would side with Miriam, and even at that natural age for eagerly sought martyrdom, Betty's lot that hour was one to make even a stout heart quake. Miss Greene perceived trouble, and requested Miriam to put away the letter, which she was beginning to show to her neighbors. Sullenly she put it into its envelope, and Miss Greene, suspecting that Betty was the storm center, tried to draw attention from her by brisk questions, for by that time every girl at the table had had it communicated to her in some such mysterious way as that which warns insects of the approaching of an enemy, that the new girl had done something atrocious for which she deserved, and would certainly receive, swift punishment at their hands. After this zestful luncheon, Miriam, Caroline, Helen, and several others of the table set hurried to Miriam's room for a council of war. "What is the matter, Miriam? What has the new girl done?" inquired Mary Livingstone. "At the table you turned all the colors of the spectrum, though your countenance was not a rainbow of promise. You were a perfect thundercloud." She was allowed to get through this sentence, for Mary Livingstone was, well, she was Mary Livingstone, not only a senior and one of the best scholars in the school, but one of the Livingstones. "Just wait until you read this thing," almost screamed Miriam, as she thrust the challenge into Mary's hand. Mary read aloud with peculiar intensity. "Miss Baird! Ah, so that is the Paderewski girl's name." Go on, the eager bevy cried in chorus. "Miss Baird feels grievously insulted by Miss Kendall's spiteful observations on the reading of Virgil. So that is the way the wind blows. At the breakfast table, and demands redress. Redress, good word. Her effrontery," muttered Miriam. "In the form of an apology. Good for her. Before the same company. If refused, she hereby challenges said Miss Kendall." "Oh ho, little monkey!" "Impertinent monkey," said Miriam. "To a competitive reading of Virgil." "Well," breathed Mary, when she had finished, as she sank apparently exhausted into a chair, "that is the most novel piece of literature I have ever read." Looking up from her low seat, she laughed, characteristically amused. "You should see yourselves standing around like conspirators, and all for one little country girl who has taken a medieval form of demanding justice." "She's a fool," said Miriam spitefully, stamping her foot. "Oh, perhaps, but a fool could hardly get up a note like this." It is on Tiffany paper, the writing not half bad, not a word is misspelled, and every small requirement is fulfilled. I doubt if she is 14. I am nearly 17, and I could not write a better note. It takes breeding, too." "Mary, you are always generous," spoke up a girl who had been the quietest of the group, a girl of 15 or 16, small and very pretty. "Not generous, Dorothy, but I always have an irresistible impulse to take the other side. The new girl is young, alone, and evidently clever. There is something ingenuous about the letter." "She is unpleasant to me," Caroline said, her rose and cream face showing that she had met an antipathetic nature. "I simply can't endure heroics." Dorothy and Mary exchanged swift glances. "I can easily believe it, Caroline," Mary answered dryly. "Little upstart! Coming here dressed like a guy and sending such a letter to one of us," scornfully said Jessie Bentworth, usually called Jess. "Did you ever see such hair?" asked Helen Dyke. "Yes," said Caroline disgustedly, "and the way she tried to push herself in the very first meal." "Well, we'll just freeze Paderewski out," said Dorothy languidly. All nodded assent except Mary, who said, "She is countrified, but I like her spunk, and I shall take more interest in her than I usually do in new girls. But it does seem doubtful about the 4 books of Virgil." "Yes, that is decidedly fishy," said Jess, making a wry face. "I certainly shall take some interest in her," said Dorothy in her soft, bored voice. "I need amusement." "She's perfectly horrid," said Miriam, frowning. Word of the challenge soon reached Miss Greene. The humor of the situation appealed strongly to her, but she felt that it would be neither wise nor kind to pass it over without ascertaining the motive which prompted Betty to act in this romantic manner, whether it was pure romance or a sense of insulted dignity and the belief that this was the only way to assert her claim to justice. Miss Greene was the soul of fair play, and her admiration for Betty was increased since she had found her sensitive as well as courageous, for it took courage to face a table full of hostile girls and bring the matter to a quick issue, rather than wait to ingratiate herself little by little, as an older and more worldly wise spirit would have done. So she sent for Betty, who responded with alacrity, for she felt that Miss Greene was a friend. Miss Greene's room was enough like Dr. Baird's study to put Betty at her ease at once, while the calm brown eyes gave her a feeling of home love and comfort, a feeling she had not had since coming to the Pines. She looked intently at the books, and Miss Greene asked her if she liked to read. "Yes, Miss Greene," she answered. Though usually gifted with too great an abundance of words, she felt strangely tongue-tied. She might cry if she uttered another word, for the reaction was coming on after the high-strung day. "I have a nice edition of Stevenson's The Child's Garden of Verses," and Miss Greene handed it to Betty. "It is very pretty," Betty answered, looking at the cover and turning the leaves. "I like the way she handles a book," Miss Greene reflected. No moistening of her thumb or careless bending of the cover. Evidently, though, she is not much of a reader, for she seems very indifferent. "I have not read it," Betty said as she returned the book. "What poetry do you like? Or don't you care for it? Many of the girls here do not." "Not like poetry!" and Betty's eyes shone. "I love Flodden Field, The Last Minstrel, The Eve of St. Agnes, Hohenlinden, Percy and Douglas, and oh, lots of others," and she stopped for breath. "Oh, they are the ones I love too," exclaimed Miss Greene. "And Sennacherib, and young Lochinvar." "Yes, and the Skeleton in Armor. They are all in an old reader of Father's. I know them all by heart," she exclaimed, her face lit up with enthusiasm. "And this, too. At midnight in his guarded tent, the Turk was dreaming of the hour." Then Miss Greene quoted, her eyes dark with the spirit of the gay old strife. "Fair stood the wind for France, when we our sails advance." and the two in concert triumphantly recited Agincourt to the end. Just those names make me cold all over. Beaumont and Willoughby bear them right doughtily. Ferrers and Fanhope, said Betty, shrugging her shoulders together with delight. I know, said Miss Greene, for I thrill every time I read there was a sound of revelry by night, and Belgium's capital had gathered then, her beauty and her chivalry. The old ballads are more shivery, said Betty. They just haunt me, as our old cook Katie says, but Ossian is my favorite. Ossian! Exclaimed Miss Greene, looking at the child in surprise. He always seemed gloomy to me. I don't know why I like him. Father says he is sentimental, but it is all so gray and grieving, and everything is solemn and large and grand. I love old things that don't happen nowadays. Old, unhappy, far-off things and battles long ago? Suggested Miss Greene, lifting her eyebrows inquiringly. Oh, that just explains what I like about Ossian and the ballads, said Betty, clasping her hands delightedly. We certainly have had an hour with the poets, said Miss Greene smilingly, and I feel we must be friends, having been introduced by the very best people, by Drayton and Byron, for instance. But in my enthusiasm I must not forget to tell you why I sent for you. She hesitated. I know about the challenge. Betty reddened, but spoke up vigorously. Wasn't that a mean, contemptible thing for that Kendall girl to say? She demanded. It was, assented Miss Greene, but I am going to ask you to let it drop. I shall talk with Miriam, and she will understand that you are doing it at my request. I shall tell her a few plain facts. I will do just whatever you ask, because, and the child blushed and hesitated, for she didn't know how to say it, because you have made me so happy. I thought I should never be happy again. Miss Greene knew how brief childish troubles are, but she also knew that they are bitter, and she showed her sympathy by patting the little brown hand as she said, "Things will soon brighten." Betty thought things were all rose-colored as she left Miss Greene's room. If troubles never come singly, and they certainly had come in battalions to her lately, she found that joys, too, come in troops. End of chapter 6. Recording by Holly Jensen.